Good morning, comrades. It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. This is your daily Good Morning Comrade. How are we doing today? I noticed a little bit this morning. I'm getting a little bit of gray in the beard. What's going on here? What's going on here? Am I getting old? Please don't tell me I'm getting old. That can't be true. I don't believe it. Anyway, what's up? Let me make sure everything's looking all right. Alrighty. Alrighty, channel. Yeah. All right. All right. Good. Good. I think we're good. I think we're good. All right, folks. I knew it. I knew I bungled something. I always do. Then we can get rolling. Alrighty. Alrighty. All right. Put in just chatting. There we are. Could not be updated. All right. Boom. Nailed it. Got it. Perfect. Wonderful. We did it. Cool. All right. So, folks, what's going on? This is Good Morning Comrade. My name is Jeff. How we doing today? How we doing? We was talking about got a little gray to beard, getting a little peppery, salt and peppery. Feeling a little bit, feeling actually pretty good today though. Feeling pretty good. Got a big, I got work coming after this, so that's no fun. But yeah, it's gonna be all right. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it through it. Got a couple of really good stories for you today. Well, here's AOC on Facebook. Mental health care is healthcare. Oh, let's talk about that. She's attending therapy and learning to slow down after the Capitol riot. Huh. Let's take a look at this. Didn't this is improvisation here, folks. I wasn't planning on covering this, but here we are. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reveals she's attending therapy and learning to slow down after the Capitol riot. I imagine it was fairly traumatic for her. I mean, like, not like I don't want to be like too like overstate this too much, I guess. But like it is a little bit terrifying to be, the target, at least in part of, big old like swarm of people. So anyway, let's see if this comes off as like one of those like, I don't know. I don't want to. AOC revealed Friday she's attending therapy after the extraordinarily traumatizing January 6th Capitol insurrection. Just like everybody else, everybody's in therapy, folks. The New York Congresswoman told the public radio show Latino USA that she's learning how to, quote, slow down after the attack, which resulted in deaths of 5 people, including a cop. After the 6th, I took some time, and it was really Representative Presley when I explained to her what happened to me, like the day of, because I ran to her office and was like, "You need to recognize trauma," AOC said, according to The Independent. I feel like I learned this the hard way after my father passed away when I was a teenager. That happened at a young age. She does like to talk about herself. That happened at a young age, and I locked it away. You have to live it for years. Okay. All right. So AOC is going to therapy. Good for her. She revealed she had the bathroom with staffer, and an angry mob of Trump supporters broke into the Capitol building while many of them chanting her name. She thought she was going to die and emotional. She's going to post on live on Friday. Never been quieter in her whole life. Yeah, that's not easy for me either, but I've never been in that kind of position. I mean, good for her. That's basically like my take. That's my take. I mean, don't want to be cruel to people who go to therapy. I'm not usually that critical generally of AOC anyway. But yeah, she's going to therapy. That's not a bad thing. All right, I wanted to look at this letter. It's an open letter from um, alumni of the Biden campaign. Matan Arad Nirman wrote this yesterday. It's an open letter to President Biden in support of Palestine. So trying to get Biden to be on side with freeing Palestine, which I think is not particularly likely, but it's a good move from the perspective of something that needs to happen. Hold on. I just heard a giant crash. I will be right back. I have no idea. Okay. All right, folks. Everybody's alive. Everything seems fine. The current good morning, G Wolf. The current suspicion is we think the cats were just jumping around in the bathtub, making a bunch of noise. That's what we're gonna go with for now. I looked around the house, nothing was destroyed, so that's good news. While I'm interrupted, though, I might as well grab some more coffee. All right. Twitch keeps buffering for you. Oh, jeez. Sorry. I don't know. I don't have any problems in terms of like dropped frames or anything over here. It would tell me if there was. It might be on your end. Sorry. But anyway, what's up, G Wolf? How you doing today? We were just talking about coming in, and somebody from the Biden campaign, this person Matan Arad Niman, wrote an article in essentially urging Joe Biden to support Palestine. So let's take a look. Dear President Biden, we write to you as proud alumni of your campaign. Each of us worked tirelessly in your headquarters and in states across the country to ensure your victory. We were motivated by the unprecedented progressive platform of your campaign. Well, you fell for it, I guess. Um, that believed in the dignity of every human being and the existential need to defeat Trumpism and and its contrary values. We commend your efforts to broker a ceasefire. I mean, yet, if you want to call like giving, $735 million to Israel, an effort to pursue a ceasefire, I mean, I guess go off, but okay, let's keep going. Yet we also cannot unsee the horrific violence that unfolded in weeks in Israel Palestine. We implore you to continue using the power of your office to hold Israel accountable. Continue using the power to hold Israel accountable. That's, well, for its actions and lay the groundwork for justice and lasting peace. The very same values that motivated us to work countless hours to elect you demand that we speak out in the aftermath of the recent explosive violence in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, which is inextricable from the ongoing history of occupation, blockade, and settlement expansion. We remain horrified by the images of Palestinian civilians in Gaza killed or made homeless by Israeli airstrikes. We are outraged by Israel's efforts to forcibly and illegally expel Palestinians into Sheikh Jarrah. That's the neighborhood where in East Jerusalem where they were removed from their home and colonized. Um, and we are shocked by Israel's destruction of building, housing, international news yeah, destruction of a building, housing international news organizations. We remain horrified by reports of Hamas rockets killing Israeli civilians. I mean, like, I guess they did a little both sides here. I mean, obviously, rockets killing civilians is bad, but like, yeah, I don't think it quite balances it. I don't think they're trying to like make it seem both sides, but it's just like I don't know. I, I, it is very frustrating when you see lip service paid to that. Good morning, Jenny. While Israelis had to spend nights hiding in bomb shelters, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip had nowhere to hide. It is critical to acknowledge this power imbalance that Israel's highly advanced military occupies the West Bank and East Jerusalem and blockades the Gaza Strip, creating an uninhabitable open air prison. Wow, this is actually pretty strongly worded. While we should never reduce the loss of human life to numbers, Palestinians had suffered hundreds of casualties, demonstrative of Israel's power over Palestinians and its penchant for disproportionate responses. Israel's protracted refusal to consider a ceasefire also put Israelis in harm's way, prolonging the violence of Hamas's barrage of rockets and Israel's airstrikes. A cycle, wait, yeah, Israel was the stubborn one, and like that was the reason that the fighting continued. A cycle that is bound to repeat itself as long as we allow the status quo to stand, where Palestinians have no freedom and Israel controls their lives in perpetuity. Wow. Okay. As you tweeted last month, no responsible American president can remain silent when basic human rights are violated. We cannot agree more. That is why we ask you to unequivocally condemn Israel's killing of Palestinian citizens. Whew, that's actually spicy. That's actually spicy. That is actually spicy right there. Demanding that Joe Biden condemn the uh, the killing of Palestinian citizens is pretty sharp. We thank you for your work to end the most recent round of violence between Israel and Hamas, to ensure a lasting ceasefire and future of peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians. We ask that you work to end the underlying conditions of occupation, blockade, and settlement expansion that is exceptionally destructive period in the 73-year history of dispossession and ethnic cleansing. Whew. The resulting status quo is one that international and Israeli human rights organizations agree meets the definition of a crime of apartheid under international law. Finally, we are deeply concerned that Israel continues to use U.S. funded military equipment to kill civilians, target journalists, and violently suppress protests in Israel, the West Bank, and Jerusalem. We appreciate your recent work to broker a temper. They're giving them a lot of credit on the piece. I think maybe that's just sort of like a peel of flattery kind of thing. like just try to encourage. I get the tactic. We also acknowledge that a temporary peace is not suitable long-term solution. We are firm in our belief that it is time for your administration to take concrete steps and end the occupation in pursuit of justice, peace, and self-determination for Palestinians. To that end, we call on you to make the following actions: demand that the Israeli government allow a humanitarian corridor in Gaza to allow for the evacuation of injured, as well as for the supply of life-giving medicines. Take action to protect Palestinians in Israel subject to ongoing violent attacks by Israeli mobs that operate with the protection of Israeli police. Okay. I mean, that would have a lot to do with what happened in the temple, in the mosque. Lift the blockade of Gaza, which has made it uninhabitable open air prison. Yeah, you can't travel if you live in Gaza. It's actually kind of wild. You kind of can't get out of there. And the forced expulsions of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah from all Palestinian homes across the territories. Okay. And settlement expansion in the West Bank. And there's more. Join our international allies in calling for an end to Israeli violations of international law. Or at a minimum, stop obstructing efforts by the United Nations to do so. Yeah, the U.S. has been like super obstructionist around this. Ensure U.S. aid no longer funds the imprisonment and torture of Palestinian children, theft and demolition of Palestinian homes and property, and annexation of Palestinian land. Good. Investigate whether Israel's most recent assault on Gaza violates the Leahy law, prohibiting U.S. military aid from funding foreign military units implicated in the commission of gross violation of human rights. End federal tax breaks for donations to settler organizations that actively fund the ongoing. Oh, that's almost like some BDS stuff right there. End federal tax breaks for donations to settler organizations that actively fund the ongoing dispossession and expulsion of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah and other cities by revoking their 501c3 status. Yeah. Support Palestinians' right to self-determination. We joined your campaign. Well, this falls short of calling for like a single unified state with equal rights, which is like what's really necessary, but it moves in a decent direction. We joined your campaign to pursue a vision of a nation that believes that every person's life and fundamental rights are valued. We remain committed to the vision, blah, 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 blah. Returning status quo is untenable, blah, 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 blah. All right, and that's all the people. Let's see if I know anybody from there. DNC people. Oh, it's got people by state. I don't think anybody in Louisiana. Nope. Skips right over it. Louisiana, nothing. Tried to post a flag in another YouTube chat and it doesn't work. I don't know what you want to do. It doesn't. So you can't post a Palestinian flag? What? I'm checking Discord, Jenny. I gotcha. What we got here? Oh, I actually had that one queued up. We can watch it right now. I actually had that one ready to go. Next, here we go. Here's on the continued Palestinian, struggle issue. Navarra Media talking about Dua Lipa and the Hadids, and how they've been. This says smeared. Probably more appropriate to kind of go down that road. I just want to make like reverse cancel culture arguments. Like, the right wing will talk about anytime, Ben Shapiro or whatever gets like in trouble or whatever, they'll complain about it on, the pages of the New York Times or in their best-selling book or whatever. But yeah, smeared is probably a better term because I don't know. It doesn't engage with that bullshit narrative. But anyway, here we go.
And the pop star Dua Lipa all have recently made Instagram posts supportive of the Palestinian. On a previous show, we talked about how the Palestinian-American supermodel Bella Hadid was smeared by the State of Israel for supporting Palestinian rights. Well, it's happened again. Only now Bella is joined by her sister Gigi and the pop star Dua Lipa. All have recently made Instagram posts supportive of the Palestinian cause, and all appeared in this full-page advert in the New York Times.
What? Oh, I did not see this. I did not see that this was in the New York Times. Holy shit. Bella, Gigi, and Dua. Hamas calls for a second Holocaust. Condemn them now. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims, a very antiquated spelling, fight the Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and... I also want to say this because I can get clipped. Rocks and... What? Who paid for the ad? Who paid for this ad? This is like libel, man.
All appeared in this full-page advert in the New York Times. So in this advert, it's a full-page spread in the New York Times. So you can see...
Also, really quick, it keeps talking about Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. At least, I hadn't seen anything from any of these people. The one I'm most familiar with is Bella Hadid, but I mean, there was definitely a smear of the chants that she and other people were doing in the streets of, I guess it was New York, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure where they were, but they were out in the street protesting, and there were I think it was the Israeli official account was saying that they were chanting to throw the Jews into the sea or something like that, and literally what they were chanting was, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which is the most common chant you will ever see at a Palestinian protest. It is wild that this is the case. Yeah, you're right. Only really old people put ads in newspapers. That's true. That is true. That is such a boomer move.
Gigi and Dua, and they are superimposed over an image of Hamas rockets. And the text says, Hamas calls for a second Holocaust. Condemn them now. Then on the right, you can see it is quoting some anti-Semitic lines from the Hamas charter. So it's saying because they've...
Now, boomers will post... Republicans and boomers, they'll put things on Facebook now. I don't even... you must be a super boomer or a rich boomer to put it in the New York Times. That's the only explanation, right? Most of the time, if you're a boomer, you're just going to do it on Facebook. You just buy Facebook ads that are just the same kind of smear. This is wild.
Supported the Palestinian cause. They now have to condemn Hamas. None of them, by the way, have ever said anything supportive of Hamas. Never. What they have said is things supportive of the Palestinian cause, and now they're being smeared as supporters of Hamas who have a responsibility to condemn them. And not only this, this isn't just a reply guy on Twitter. This is a full-page ad in the United States paper of record, the most established newspaper in the world. Now, the ad was placed by the World Values Network, which is run by a right-wing American rabbi. And below the image was a lengthy bit of text, a real essay there. And it includes...
Yeah, of course. Of course they had a very specific audience in mind. It's the people who still get the New York Times in print, right? Which is a certain demographic, older demographic of sort of wealthier people in coastal cities, on the East Coast mostly. That's exactly right. And again, how much does a full page ad in the New York Times cost? Full page ad. All right. So this is, I guess, as of 2019, a full page ad. All right. I'm looking at it. I'm looking. Where's how much does it cost, folks? 2 page, 100 page, full page. Sunday edition, $245,451. Weekday nationwide $214, $733, and then add on you get another $75,000. So somebody paid $250,000 to post that. Incredible.
What the women have written on social media. I'm just going to go to what I think are some of the key bits. Bella Hadid and Dua Lipa even went so far as including the
$250,000 though. Could you imagine? I mean, like, I guess for like what, World Values Network, is that who did this? They I mean, I guess that kind of an organization just like has money. But $250,000 to just, I will never make $250,000 in my whole life, like in a year, ever. And they're just like, you know what? Let's just blow that to smear these three women for protesting in favor of Palestinian rights. Incredible.
Disgusting libel that Israel, a country with 2 million Muslim Arab citizens, is engaging in ethnic cleansing. These people are adjacent to Hamas, responsible for anti-Semitism, and it's because they have the temerity to accuse Israel of what they call a disgusting libel, and that it's engaging in ethnic cleansing. Now, what they were referencing in their Instagram posts was the expulsions, the evictions in Sheikh Jarrah. Now, these expulsions are kicking out people from their homes who are Palestinian, and they're moving in people who are Jewish. And that's not a coincidence. That's how the law works. If you're a Jewish person, then you can say, oh, before 1948, we held this claim to this bit of land, and we can essentially override anyone who currently lives there and kick them out. The same law doesn't apply for Palestinians. So there is a law which is allowing Jews to kick out Palestinians because they're Jews and because they're Palestinians. Now, that is kind of ethnic cleansing, isn't it? Now, their point is that, oh, it can't be ethnic cleansing because there are lots of, well, he says Muslim Arab citizens, which is, I mean, the word is Palestinian citizens of Israel, because not all Palestinians are Muslim. He's saying unless you're killing everyone, it can't be ethnic cleansing. Now, that's not really how the legal definition works. So that one falls down. Another complaint. Let's go to this one. This one is more ridiculous. So this is of Bella Hadid, and they write, she also maligned Israel as apartheid, even as it is the only country in world history to airlift Africans into freedom, and sets the standard for multiracial coexistence.
All right. So really quick, like Bella Hadid is not even like the only person out there like saying that Israel is an apartheid state. Like organizations like Human Rights Watch, which are not like, they're not like that far away from the like U.S. foreign policy apparatus. They're calling Israel an apartheid state. So, you know, focusing on individuals like Bella Hadid, like, hey, you know, there's influence that is going into that. And I have to do a reverse shout out. This is an anti shout out. This is a smear on for you got to dunk on Bernie for this one, but he kind of just the other day came out and said that that the apartheid rhetoric was causing anti-Semitism. And come on, Bernie, you can't do that, bro. I know. I guess I understand what he's trying to do, but no, that's not good. Come on, dude. Come on, man.
Now, the
get your words straight, Jack.
Question is a reference to charter flights in 1991, which took Ethiopian Jews to Israel to escape a civil war. It's kind of cool. Fair play. It's somewhat overshadowed by Israel's military support for apartheid South Africa, right. But we don't need to look to history to fact check Bella Hadid's claim that Israel is an apartheid state. No, we just need to look to reports from Human Rights Watch, reports from Israeli human rights organizations such as B'Tselem. And they argue that because Israel has occupied a people for 54 years, because it kicks people out of their homes for not being Jewish, and because it controls where Palestinians can and cannot live, then
yeah, that's not true at all. Google how Israel treats Ethiopian Jews or even the Arabs living in Israel. True.
The phrase apartheid counts, right? And he's now essentially libeling her and saying this is ridiculous because they once airlifted people out of Ethiopia. Very terrible argument. Still, you can pay for it to be full page ad in the New York Times. One final quote I'm going to get from this advert, and this is the one that I find particularly disgusting. Bella, Gigi, and Dua should be aware that 6 million Jews were annihilated in the Holocaust just 75 years ago, and the Hamas genocidal charter openly calls for the murder of Jews. Is the ongoing vilification of Jews in Israel on social media perhaps the reason we see Jews being beaten up in Times Square? It's a really horrible thing to say anyway, to say that someone standing up for Palestinian rights is essentially responsible for anti-Semitic attacks, which they have nothing to do with. But to say that in a full-page ad in the world's most famous established newspaper, I think is completely disgusting. It's completely disgusting the New York Times allowed this ad to be placed. And I mean, the whole thing is gross. Ash, I want to bring you in on this. And particularly, I mean, I've read the text there, but obviously the thing that stands out when you originally see that advert is the call to condemn Hamas, the picture of these three celebrities in front of images of Hamas rockets. I mean, it is really disgusting, isn't it, to say because these people have spoken out in favor of Palestinian rights and against Israeli war crimes, essentially, they have to condemn this organization they have absolutely nothing to do with.
So I actually think this ad works on two levels, and there's a aspect of plausible deniability.
Bernie has been like not the worst on this for the most part. He's definitely like been focused on the like he definitely supports Palestinians like equal rights and stuff like that. He's just extremely weak on attacking Israel, which is like kind of consistent for Bernie generally. He's not really an attacker, just sort of generally speaking. I just don't like when he starts doing this sort of like, hey, y'all got to back it down, that kind of stuff like that. Largely because all this stuff is being rolled out in total bad faith. But anyway.
Ability to the whole thing. So the first level is exactly
and that
what
is
you
true.
described.
Like population, the U.S. like popular opinion has never been, at least, and I talk about this probably too much, but like I cannot help myself. It feels like there's been more support publicly, less even like the whole reason that people like AOC and probably less so with Ilhan Omar and with Rashida Tlaib. They're like they would probably be doing this anyway. They had like standing up in support, but like somebody like Ayanna Pressley, for example, the whole reason they can like come out and basically full-throatedly support Palestine is because there's so much popular support for Palestine, like in general. So that's a good thing. And yeah, I think Robert's right in that sense. But I mean, I do agree that like with Ginny in the sense that like Bernie like isn't good at attacking in general. And he kind of like, he likes softer rhetoric, I guess. Unless he's talking about millionaires and billionaires, who he definitely will attack.
Right. Which is setting up tenuous connections of responsibility and trying to box these three women into a point where they are implored to condemn Hamas, despite having never offered words of support for Hamas in the first place. And it's trying to set up connections between expressing support for Palestinian humanity, for civil rights, for Israel to abide by international law, connecting it to support of Hamas, and then, of course, to anti-Semitic racist attacks on Jewish people who live in the diaspora, whether that is in Times Square or in London. All right, so that is the first level that this ad is working on. But the second, when you look at the image and the text placement, what it does is invoke the reader to condemn Gigi, Bella, and Dua now, right? So when you look at the image, it makes this connection between the three women to Hamas, and it's almost in conversation with the reader saying, condemn these three women now. And that's why the image, the picture is so prominent and the text is broken up the way that it is, because grammatically it has the first meaning you're talking about, but the instant impact and the gloss is the second meaning. So I think that one of these things that the ad is doing,
I don't remember. I don't understand her second point. What is she saying?
So that is the first level that this anti-Semitic racist
right.
attack.
The first point she's making is that they're trying to connect Dua, Gigi, and Bella to Hamas. That's clear. I wasn't quite clear on the second point.
On Jewish people who live in the diaspora, whether that is in Times Square or in London. All right, so that is the first level that this ad is working on. But the second, when you look at the image and the text placement, what it does is invoke the reader to condemn Gigi, Bella, and Dua now, right? So when you look at the image,
yeah, it's like imploring them to condemn Hamas, and then by extension, it condemning them because it's like assuming that they support Hamas or whatever, when they never have ever even like Hamas has literally nothing to do with what they're talking about. They are upset that Israeli airstrikes are murdering civilians.
It makes this connection between the three women to Hamas, and it's almost in conversation with the reader saying, condemn these three women now.
Yep.
And that's why the image, the picture is so prominent and the text is broken up the way that it is, because grammatically it has the first meaning you're talking about, but the instant impact and the gloss is the second meaning. So I think that one of these things that the ad is doing is that it's a tacit form.
Yeah, Bernie probably would have said the exact same thing 10 years ago as well. Like, I don't know. He's a consistent dude. You're right.
Of incitement. And I think that it picks on three women deliberately because it plays on these tropes of women being treacherous, of being aligned with terrorism and the jihadist force. And it's a way of inviting a particular kind of hatred and backlash, which I think is inherently gendered. There's a reason why they chose these three women for the image. There have been plenty of male celebrities who have spoken out during this period of conflict with the bombardment of Gaza. Why isn't Mark Ruffalo on there? Right? He's been a prominent and outspoken voice. Well, it's because I think having three very beautiful, very young women plays a certain role of activating, I think, quite a violent and hateful backlash.
That's an excellent
because it's intended to be intimidating, right? So if you can evoke a violent backlash, then that's job done, because what this ad is intending to do is to disincentivize other celebrities from speaking out, and especially other celebrities who might feel like, you know, having threats towards them seem more credible. You know, I imagine if you're someone like Dua Lipa, you get a lot more threats than if you're someone like Mark Ruffalo, which is why the cause and effect of this ad might be how the people who placed it potentially want it to be.
I think absolutely. What this is a punishment. It's not a debate of political difference, right? Which is entirely legitimate to have. I might completely disagree with the point of view of this organization, but it's fine to open up a conversation. You're right. This is about incitement and about intimidation and about inviting enough of a backlash that three young women in the public eye think twice about speaking out in this way again.
So Dua Lipa, this was a post she put on her social media accounts. I utterly reject the false and appalling allegations that were published today. This is the price you pay for defending Palestinian human rights against an Israeli government whose actions in Palestine, both Human Rights Watch and the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem, accuse of persecution and discrimination. The World Values Network are shamelessly using my name to advance their ugly campaign with falsehoods and blatant misrepresentations of who I am and what I stand for.
That is a badass, like, shot back statement. Like, she's basically saying F you. Like, you're trying to smear my name. We see what you're doing. That's not going to move me. I'm still standing in solidarity with Palestinian people. That is awesome.
I stand in solidarity with all oppressed people and reject all forms of racism. Very strong statement. Very difficult to argue with anything she said there. She could have gone further. She could have said Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem say not only are they guilty of persecution and discrimination, but apartheid. But I've got no complaints. This wasn't the first time the not very convincingly named World Values Network has taken out a full-page ad.
I love that these, like, absolutely horrible organizations just, like, give themselves innocuous names like the World Values Network. That's incredible. Like, that's how you know an organization is completely evil. But like, yeah, when they just sort of like give themselves this sort of like flat like name that is supposed to like just push for like generally good feelings or whatever the hell. That's how you know it's really evil. Yeah, Ash always gives an angle that we wouldn't look at. I mean, I mean, she's really sharp and she's really good at media criticism.
Newspaper after celebrities have come out in support of Palestinian rights. So
I don't know if there's going to be a lawsuit. I mean, there's just going to I mean, they maybe would do that. Maybe they would do that, but I think the cry back from like the World Values Network or whatever would be free speech. But I mean, like it looks to me like libel, but I'm no expert on libel law. I would assume that like they have talked to a lawyer, but I don't know. I don't know. It looks like a pretty cut and dry case, but I know that this stuff is complicated.
2018, Lord cancelled a concert in Tel Aviv, and in response, the World Values Network ran this ad in the Washington Post. Now, in this ad, again, it's very visual. Here you can see Lord's face superimposed over a picture of men running through rubble, cradling babies. And then the text of the ad says, Lord joined a global anti-Semitic boycott of Israel, but will perform in Russia, despite Putin's support for Assad's genocide in Syria.
Where is this? I missed where that was. That's like, again, they're coming after Lord now.
Post.
Where is
World Values Network ran this ad in the Washington
Post. Oh my God.
Now, in this ad, again, it's very visual. Here you can see Lord's face superimposed over a picture of men running through rubble, cradling babies. And then the text of the ad says, Lord joined a global anti-Semitic boycott of Israel, but will perform in Russia, despite Putin's support for Assad's genocide in Syria. On the right, 21 is young to become a bigot. A really horrible.
Holy shit, dude. Holy shit. Oh my God. Just like calling her a bigot and saying she supports genocide because she took a political stand again. Like, that is nuts, man. That is absolutely wild.
Advert to place about 21-year-old because she stood in support of human rights of the Palestinian people. Together, as Ash said, a common thread you've got here is that this is attacking young women in the press. Also, what you see in those two adverts is all of the arguments used against advocates for Palestinians, completely, crystallized, concentrated against the Hadid sisters and Dua Lipa. You've got, if you oppose apartheid, you support Hamas. And if you criticize Israel, you support anti-Semitism. Against Lord, you can't criticize the actions of Israel until you criticize every other bad thing happening in the world.
And okay. I did like the most basic research, and I probably should have known this, but like the World Values Network is a Rabbi Shmuley operation. So, okay, now I get it.
You criticize Israel without criticizing every other bad thing happening in the world, that means you're anti-Semitic. That's the argument they put out in the Washington Post there. Obviously, neither the Washington Post nor the New York Times should have allowed these adverts to happen. And I hope that, Dua and the Hadid sisters and Lord boycott anything that those papers do in future because of what they've done to them. Now, Ash, I want to bring you in on these arguments that are always used against supporters of Palestinian rights. Because as you said, I think these adverts work on a level which is to incite threats against these people. At the same time, you are seeing these same arguments they throw out against everyone. If you oppose apartheid, you support Hamas. If you criticize Israel, you support anti-Semitism. You can't criticize Israel unless you criticize every other human rights abuse that is going on in the world. It's all incredibly predictable. I do feel like this time around, it's potentially not working as well as it had in the past for people who are, viciously supporting the Israeli government in everything they do.
Oh yeah, the shine's coming off the apple for sure. But let's talk about some of these tactics. Obviously, the specific nature of how Israel was formed as a state and by who presents problems for when you want to talk about it as a settler colonial endeavor, which I personally believe it is. You also have to take into account the historic violent persecution and attempted extermination of the Jewish people. And so what the ideology of Zionism does is that it treats as one and the same the belief in the humanity of Jewish people, a belief in their right to living in safety wherever it is they live and to self-determination as a people. It says that those things can only be expressed in an ethno-state that is Israel.
Right. Therein lies the problem. Living in peace is not the problem with Zionism. That's, of course, that is of course like everybody's right. But in like the an ethno-state, you don't have a right to that. That's not like, that's too far. Like, I don't think there should not be ethno-states. Period.
And so that's how you get this slippage between criticizing an ideology, the ideology of a state, its actions as a settler colonial state, and then this notion that it is anti-Semitic at all to talk about the ideology, the action, and the colonial project. So that's one tactic which has been used again and again, and I think is more difficult to maintain in the face of these images being broadcast around the world, where we can really see what's happening. And then you've got this debate, this rhetorical flourish that you see, which is unless you speak out about X, Y, and Z, whether it's the Uyghurs or Syria or Boko Haram, then you are morally inconsistent, and therefore you must not talk about Israel and Palestine. And if you do, you must be implicitly motivated by kinds of anti-Semitism. And that's why you're talking about this and not other things. Now, one, that's a ridiculous argument. It's a completely ridiculous argument because one, when people do speak out about these other things, often it doesn't garner very much attention and not as much. And two, well, there is something different about the Israel and Palestine conflict, and that's because we as Britain, or they as America, have sold millions and billions worth of weapons to this country, which are now being used against the civilian occupation in maintaining the world's longest running occupation. All right. That is what is different about this conflict. But these lines and arguments, actually, they had a life before, and you actually saw them being mobilized in defense of apartheid South Africa. So one of the things that was often said in response to people who are saying apartheid is a moral abomination, it is a stain on our collective humanity, and we must not only call it out, but participate in a movement of boycott.
Yeah, that is like the number one move. And this is why it was so disappointing that Bernie came out and said what he said about the apartheid rhetoric juicing anti-Semitism, is because like the very first thing that these people go to, that like, a lot of the high level, like essentially Israel defenders go to, is, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Boom, first thing. And like most of the people are, nearly every space that I'm in is literally like explicitly against anti-Semitism. It is important, extremely important, that this is not about, like Jewish people, and it's not about it's not about like any, like it's not about race in a lot of really weird ways. I mean, it is, because that's what's being weaponized here. But like the point of the liberation is liberation of the Palestinian people. That is like a question of human rights for everyone. And like, so I mean, obviously it is about race because that's what's being weaponized here, or the identity, ethnicity, whatever you want to call it. But it's really important that the Palestinian liberation movement is not anti-Semitic, because like that is going to be the first thing that the Israel defenders will go to, because they know that is one, anti-Semitism is a real thing, and it is a horrible problem with a horrible history that has caused so many deaths. But you have to distance yourself from that 100%. Like anti-Semitism is bad, but then at the same time, yeah, it's important to be openly and clearly anti-Semitic, so they, even when they try to weaponize fake cries of anti-Semitism against you, they got nothing on you. So
divestment and sanctions, you often had people go, oh, well, you don't care about the human rights abuses in other African countries. Yeah. So why are you singling out South Africa? Again, this is an old move, an old rhetorical gesture, and it's being used once more in support of an apartheid state, the state of Israel. And I think that this is something which, again, is harder to maintain because you can't have it both ways. You can't have what I believe is true, which is that it is anti-Semitic to align all Jewish people with the state of Israel, hold one collectively responsible for the other, and say that that is anti-Semitic, that's racism, and that's wrong. And also at the same time say, but any attempt to criticize the state of Israel, how it was founded, what it does, the continuing occupation, the projects of ethnic cleansing, the maintaining and deepening of an apartheid system within the borders of Israel itself, that is also anti-Semitic. Because then, in order to hold that line, one, requires you to deny the evidence before your very eyes, to reject out of hand the judgment of Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem. But two, it forces you into a position of doing an anti-Semitism yourself, where you go, oh, I can't criticize Israel because that means I'm criticizing all Jewish people, that I'm partaking in an act of racism against them. So can't have it both ways. And I think more and more people are beginning to see that.
Yeah, that's good. Great video. Check out Navarra Media for sure. I'm going to keep going, actually. I got a couple of more stories that I wanted to get to that we haven't gotten to yet. Speaking of, by the way, anti-Semitism, this is actually extremely wild to me. So I just want to sort of pivot a little bit talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who literally like came out and said that mask mandates were equivalent to the Holocaust. Let's look at it.
So, Garrett, let's talk about Republicans here for a minute, because Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is sparking controversy again, this time for comparing mask restrictions in the House.
Greene has made it her business to say incendiary and...
I'm looking for the raw video. Why is it so difficult these days to get raw video?
I stand by all of my statements. I said nothing wrong. And I think any rational Jewish person didn't like what happened in Nazi Germany, and any rational Jewish person doesn't like what's happening with overbearing mask mandates and overbearing vaccine policies.
That is wild to me, right? So on the Congress floor, she said, essentially, she compared mask mandates to Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and things like that. And her justification in her own defense is to say, well, they didn't like it. They didn't like the Jews, and it is literally anti-Semitic. Like I cannot think of anything like more anti-Semitic than that. Like comparing wearing a mask in public, which is like a minor inconvenience, to the persecution and murder of 6 million Jews in Nazi Germany, Poland, etc. Making that comparison is like I cannot think of anything that is more outrageous than that. I mean, I guess I could, but like that is actually literally wild. I just wanted to drop that in there, sort of like as a comparison of like what you can get away with saying, even though she is getting some heat for it, I suppose. But this is like the other side, actual waste of good oxygen. There was one more thing that I wanted to look at. Because where is it? I'm so bad at this. All right, cool. So I want to thank David Dole for pulling this first off. Nomiki Konst was on. Nomiki Konst was on Fox News recently, and here's what she had to say. Wait, yeah, here we go. Where is she? What the hell? There, I'll just use the video that David used. or that David did. So this is David Dole. I'm going to use his video just to kind of help me get to there, get to the point.
The pandemic is ending, and you want to keep everybody angry at COVID and the assault on freedom because you have to wear masks. God forbid you have to keep your community safe.
My friend, Nomiki Konst, was a host of the Nomiki Show, was on Fox News where she battled host Will Kane over Big Pharma and vaccines. I want to play a clip of their discussion for you here.
$5.6 billion in revenue to Big Pharma so far through the COVID-19 vaccine.
I don't know about that. Like, maybe that would be like a big stretch, I think, at least at this point. But maybe I'm wrong.
Read your Twitter feed. I've seen a lot of your comments, Nomiki. You've been pretty aggressive. You've said that conservatives or anyone else who has questions about the vaccine are anti-vaxxers. You pointed Joe Rogan, I believe, once and called him an anti-vaxxer. Is it wrong to have questions about the motivations of this vaccine? Is it wrong right now to remain skeptical of Big Pharma?
Well, I love that you're skeptical of Big Pharma, just like Katie Porter was skeptical of Big Pharma just yesterday. He's a representative from California, a Democrat. And just like Bernie Sanders has put forward 3 pieces of legislation to rein in on Big Pharma and the fact that they're focused on profits. Listen, AbbVie, this is a pharmaceutical company, spent $1.6 billion in 5 years on research and development, yet $50 billion went to shareholders, $13 billion went to stock buybacks during that 5-year period. Their priorities are absolutely
Nomiki,
in the wrong places.
That backs up the point. I'm sorry, Nomiki, but the question isn't why I have grown skepticism towards Big Pharma. The question is why those on the left, like yourself, have become such blind followers of Big Pharma. Why is it if you have questions? Well, Nomiki, you've been calling.
Yeah, this is like classic, right? So what Nomiki's doing is essentially because what this guy Will Kane is trying to put forward is like a really sloppy argument, and really a very Tucker Carlson like argument, where essentially the right wing is trying to do this sort of like anti-corporate populist position, and so he's combining narratives of being anti, like he's trying to essentially parlay basically anti-vaccine or skeptical of the vaccine as anti-corporate, which is what she's jumping in here right now, about to sort of like explode. So good job on her for cutting that stuff off. Yeah, Nomiki rules.
Anyone that would question Big Pharma when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, an anti-vaxxer. When did you place your trust so blindly in people that stand to make $5.6 billion from this vaccine?
The definition of intelligence is being able to hold 2 thoughts in your head at the same time and be able to consider. Big Pharma makes a lot of money, and they're not spending enough money on research and development, which is where their priority should be.
But they should be trusted blindly on this issue.
Other pharmaceuticals are stronger. It's not blind. The science is out about the vaccines. The vaccines work. Should there be a booster? I'm no scientist, but neither is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan should not act like a scientist. Joe Rogan
himself will come out and say that he is a dummy and don't listen to me. So like he undercuts his own argument, and like that's the other thing about this, and this is a great point that Nomiki's making, that like Joe Rogan is not an authority on the vaccine. He's basically doing like really irresponsible like ruminations on his show, but at least he'll like back off from them at least from time to time, like not defending it, of course, but like it's just like it's very, very wild that this guy will just like say, well, Joe Rogan said X, and Nomiki has to come back and say, yeah, all of the science that exists that on the vaccine says the absolute opposite. Who you gonna believe?
Be telling people not to wear masks,
here's the
take
truth.
the vaccine.
This is what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned
planet.
you're a big vaccine booster now, not because you believe the science backs it up, but because the vaccine has come to represent a political ideal, a political signifier. I think you did it because you thought it was a win over Republicans. That's all. Nothing more, nothing deeper.
The Republicans want to keep their base. See, what's happening right now is you guys want to prolong. The pandemic is ending, and you want to keep everybody angry at COVID and the assaults on freedom because you have to wear masks. God forbid you have to keep your community safe and your grandmother safe. You want to keep that going because it's been working.
I got to run to Mickey. I want to say two things.
All right. Good job, No Mickey. Look, I probably even said her name wrong in the beginning of this. It's No Mickey. I think that's the first time I heard No Mickey, but hilarious. Anyways, obviously here I'm biased, but
I think I say her name right. Do I say her name right? Rogan is an expert on MMA and DMT, and that's about it. I don't even know if he understands actually what's going on with DMT. He just knows that it's like that's the good drug, you know.
I thought Nomi Key did a fantastic job, really dissecting the problem here. Like this quote from Will Kane is amazing projection.
100% counting Amberjacks. Rogan works through his ignorance on air. Unfortunately, his community is very echo chamberish. True. And they'll like hook on to like a particular thing he says and essentially just say, this is the truth. And it's funny. Like I said before, Joe Rogan doesn't even stand by his own dumb comments half the time. So whatever.
I'm concerned you're a big vaccine booster now, not because you believe the science backs it up, but because the vaccine has come to represent a political ideal. Who's pushed that idea? Conservatives have pushed that idea, not the left.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he has complete disregard for any responsibility. 100%, he's irresponsible. Like 100%. Don't beat yourself up over it. I mean, like the one thing about Joe Rogan that like the reason that he has like the biggest podcast, and this is like really important, is that like he is like, at least to a lot of people, like a relatable dude. Like he comes across, now he's a rich ass comedian or whatever, but like he comes through at least to a lot of his listeners as like a normal person or whatever. So
nobody on the left is saying,
and like the way that his interviews kind of generally go, because I've listened to a couple of them here and there. I used to listen to a lot more than I do now, but like he literally, like for the most of his episodes, just lets his guests talk, which like allows the guests to essentially say what they want to say, which is, if you have a good guest, it's good. If you have a guest that is like interesting, or if you have a guest that's like putting forward a good political message, that's a good thing. If it's Ben Shapiro or Alex Jones or any of these other, Richard Spencers or whatever the hell, if it's any of those people, then like that's not good. That's not good at all. But he'll just sort of like agree with his guest all the time, which means that the guest selection or whatever is critical.
Is saying I don't know.
Bernie was on, and that was, I mean, getting Bernie to that audience is a good thing. That's a whole different conversation. Like there is no like, and this is part of why Joe Rogan's so dangerous, I think. There's no like ideological rooting with that guy. He's completely unmoored. He's basically just like just kind of like floating out there in space, and the only things that like he gets really excited about or angry about are things that like either like are interesting to him or that repulse him, hence his like very, 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 very horrible and terrible and indefensible position on trans people and trans athletes. Abby Martin was on there, and she is able to talk about Gaza and U.S. imperialism. I mean, again, sometimes he'll have great guests. Most of the time, he'll have terrible guests.
Oh, even how you would intertwine getting vaccinated with your politics. It's this whole, especially if you know any anti-vaxxers, which I do, they're not the one I know is not conservative, and many are yoga, kombucha kind of people, and nothing. I'm into natural healing. I'm not against that stuff. In fact, I've used some of it myself, but I'm also a believer in science, and I'm a believer.
I don't even know what kombucha is. Like, I've drank kombucha, but I actually don't know what it is.
Vaccines, and I'm a believer in the obvious data coming out showing where people are vaccinated in the U.S. As vaccines have increased, cases have come down. It's obvious. Also in Israel, same thing. Ton of vaccinations out, cases came down. So I'm a believer in data, in science, but the idea that it's a political position to be pro-vaccine is so completely
I don't agree, Jenny. Like, Bill Maher, like, if nothing else, if nothing else, Joe Rogan isn't like smug, and Bill Maher is like the most smug motherfucker on planet Earth. Like, he is such like an alienating, like, horrible, terrible person that like not, I mean, like, he might be right more than like, and I'm not even sure about this, but like the way that he communicates is like, if you don't agree with me, you're a freaking idiot, you know? And that's like, people hate that. I hate that.
Insane. And obviously here he's projecting. Now, there's also, you know, at the heart of all of this, there's, yes, a healthy skepticism of big pharma. So the idea that big pharma, you know, making all this money off these vaccines, yeah, that's a problem. And guess what? If you're angry about that, then you should want to decommodify healthcare. You should want to get capitalism out of healthcare.
But never the answer.
A conservative is not going to back that idea. So they're just angry about big pharma making money while having no actual critique of the system that led them to make that kind of money off the vaccines. Now, the people that, not conservatives, but the people that have a real skepticism of the healthcare industry, of big pharma, and have led that to vaccines, there's an underlying point that they have there in terms of the idea that doctors, you know, overprescribe pills, don't focus enough on health and wellness. This is an issue in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
But to then extend that to everything, to then extend that to vaccine science,
and like, literally the entire idea of vaccines is that everybody needs to get one. And the idea of like prescription medication is that you need these for very specific situations. So like, the idea that you can tell somebody, like, as an individual, give them individual advice about whether or not they should get the vaccine, literally flies in the face of the entire point of vaccines. Like, the only people that should not be getting the vaccine are people who would have an adverse effect from getting the vaccine. That is like period. That's who shouldn't get the vaccine. So if you're watching right now, get the vaccine unless you have a specific reason from your doctor for why you shouldn't get the vaccine.
There's no connection there. And obviously, look around the world, who's vaccinated, it's helped bring the numbers down. So it's fine to be skeptical of a system that is so based in money, where you have healthcare executives making millions and millions and millions. Of course, yes, be skeptical of that. Want to decommodify healthcare, get the profit motive completely out of healthcare. That should be a desire of everyone. But you can't extend that skepticism to everything when it comes to healthcare and science. So in terms of discussing this issue with people that are anti-vax, that are not conservatives, I think that's kind of how you can discuss it. And again, I've discussed in the past, when you're talking with people who don't view things the way you do, you have to go into a conversation like that willing to listen and speak on their level. Don't speak down to anybody that you think is stupid or whatever. Like, you have to be able to speak on their level, be kind, be courteous, and just have a conversation. Don't think you're going to change someone's mind in the moment, because you're not going to. You may plant some seeds though, and that's what you hope will bloom into.
Right. And to David's point here, we keep talking about Bill Maher. I think the part of the problem with the Maher approach is that his G Wolf's saying it actually pretty well. The personality gets in the way. He's not going to convince anybody that they're wrong and get them to change their mind. He's basically his entire perspective and his entire outlook is to essentially look good on TV and get the vicious dunk. you know. Anti-vaxxers need to work at an animal shelter for a month. They learn a lot about population health and how it's related to individual health. Yeah, that's true. County Amberjacks.
Evolution in terms of ideas and people changing. But in terms of the conservatives on this issue, they have nothing to stand on. They're not against money in healthcare, yet they're against the vaccine. Like, I don't even understand their thought process. But again, it goes back to them connecting it to a political ideal, because that is absolutely not how the left has viewed this issue.
Yeah, that was a really good video by David. I think he's a really smart guy too. I really appreciate his commentary on these sorts of things. And just to kind of like circle back to Nomiki, she really did kill it. And time to do a plug, I guess. Check out Kenzo Shibata's show from. He released the video of it yesterday. Nomiki, myself, and Jamie Peck were on Meet the Left on Kenzo Shibata's channel. Check that out. And if anybody watched it, how did I do? Did I do all right? Did I come off sounding smart? Did I sound like a dummy? Post it in comments. Let me know. But anyway, I think I'm gonna get ready to end this stream. I'm gonna see what I'm gonna do with my Twitch folks to try and find a good place to raid y'all. Who's on? Let's send you over to Dan, who is the host of. He's the producer of Meet the Left. He's got his own little channel there too. Let's go ahead and rate him, Twitch people. And for those of y'all who are watching, goodmorningcomrade.com, patreon.com/goodmorningcomrade. Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
Question that the racial difference between the mostly white police and the mostly African-American police in Ferguson, Missouri contributed to the intensity of protests for the killing of black crowds. Reformers often call for recruiting more officers of color in the hopes that they'll treat communities with greater dignity, respect, and fairness. Hey, oh shit. Fuck yeah, dude. We got Good Morning Comrade radio rating right now. Thank you, Raiders. For those of you who don't know, Raiders. I'm Dan. I'm a leftist streamer and content creator and producer. I produce Kenzo Shibata Show, Meet the Left. I also do my own interview.
And I fucking hope that number goes down. I'm losing my mind. I'll be okay, but thanks for asking. And nobody asked. And thank you for the raid. It's really good to be with you. This week I'm talking about abolition. Every now and then I have like a topic I want to dig into. This week I'm digging. Police abolition is the topic. We're reading Alex Vitale's End of Policing. And that's a free download. That's a free download as an ebook. You wouldn't download a car, would you? Oh, I reached my reading goal. Do you see that? You can sort of see it peeking down. After having up my my ebook application for like 5-10 minutes, it says, "Congratulations, Dan. You've reached your goal today." It cracks me up every time. So we're reading Alex Vitale's End of Policing. We're reading about the argument like for diversity. If you could reform a police department, make it more diverse, that'll solve the problem. All right. Even the most diverse forces have major problems with racial profiling and bias, and individual Black and Latino officers appear to perform very much like their counterparts. Oh, so shit. I don't quite work at all. And yeah, I download a car too. Exactly. Good Morning Comrade Radio. Is that like the longest allowed name on Twitch?